Yo, what's up? It's hard for me to make this video brief because if I get into rehearsing the history of what happened between myself and Joe Vegan, things get long-winded quick. On the other hand, if I make this too brief, I'll sound like a jerk and I'm just heaping scorn on Joe Vegan at a time when he's obviously going through a kind of personal crisis. To me, it was obvious several weeks ago that he was already going through a personal crisis. He made videos where he talked about being lighthearted and just having fun with it. But in his voice and in his eyes, you could see for him this was not lighthearted at all. He sounded morose. He sounded very upset. He sounded very concerned about the game he was playing and its consequences, which includes the consequences for people like me. Perhaps me more than anyone else, because I know I'm one of the people who really talked to him in a very raw, very honest way about how emotionally devastating some of his videos were for me. Real talk. I don't pretend to be a tough guy. But as I said in another context, I'm tougher than some of these guys. It is weird for me because part of what Joe Vegan is now saying about himself is actually much more harsh than any criticism I ever offered him. I think it's true in general. He laments that he has become part of the problem. And in a much more nuanced and sympathetic way, that was what I was trying to communicate to him, because he did not intend to be part of the problem. He wanted to be part of the solution. I think he went into this with good intentions, and as he has now said himself, money and popularity and pandering to his audience led him down a path where instead he ended up becoming part of the problem. With that being said, he's still morally superior to Vegan Cheetah. He never did to me any of the things Cheetah has done. He never did to me other things that, for instance, Joe Best has done. I do not think that Joe Vegan has in a malicious way sought to slander me or defame me. I do not think he ever bought into the sport of slander, which has become normal in the vegan scene and the vegan drama scene. And the irony is, I started a small foundation. I started a charity drive called Vegans Against Violence and Defamation. We raised $6,500 in one day to try to end this culture of defamation within veganism. What had become normal. Well, gradually would have become normal. And instead, what I've seen is, while my court case has gone ahead, which is wonderful, it's doing the right thing for the right reasons. Court case ain't over yet. Everyone's innocent until proven guilty. I have no reason to think the outcomes will be positive. But instead, what I've seen is that problem, the violence and defamation, threats of violence and defamation, it's metastasized. It's spread. Instead of being focused in one point like a star, it's become a constellation. In the same way that 2 years ago, over 100 channels tried to imitate Durian Rider to get the little bit of money and fame that he had going. In the same way, maybe 100 channels are now trying to imitate Cheetah to try to get that little bit of money and fame. And a lot of people don't understand what it is they're imitating, or they don't fully understand what it is they're imitating. But the sport of slander, this business of defamation, being used in this way, sadly, it's only become more and more common. And again, Joe, without having bad intentions, I think step by step, like a boiling frog, like a slippery slope, he really ended up being part of the problem that he was trying to address, that he was trying to make if anything, a positive contribution to, originally through satire. Because satire can be a positive contribution, can be an important contribution to a culture. And there was a time, I can't go through the whole list of what happened to me and Joe Vegan, but there was a time when I really sent him positive feedback, and I did so out of sympathy. Because I imagine if I was in his position, I would want to hear exactly the kind of positive feedback I sent him. I can remember, for example, I sent him an email updating him, because I'd had a private conversation with Jason Pizzino, and Pizzino and we both were laughing about some recent jokes that Joe Vegan had made against Pizzino and against me. And I just sent Joe Vegan the short message, hey, just so you know, me and Pizzino were talking the other day, and we were both laughing about your video. Like, we're both not offended. And I remember I mentioned by contrast somebody else I know, somebody else I know through the internet, we're not good friends, someone else I know who was offended by the same video, So it's just a short message saying, look, I'm not offended, I'm not worried about this. So I did send the guy positive support. I did offer to support his channel back when he had very few viewers. He had fewer viewers than I had when he was first starting up, when he had first switched to the comedy format. Offered many, many times to have him come on Skype, have him do a podcast with me, come on my channel. My initial respect for him was based on his honesty in dealing with his own past as a former true believer in Durian Rider and Freely, as someone who bought a bicycle and packed up the bicycle and flew to Thailand to go worship at the feet of the cult leader. And he really was honest in reflecting on his cult-like attachment to that group, that subculture within veganism. It's not cult-like for everybody, but is for some people, and that he grew out of that, or he escaped from that mentality. So that was my first reason for being interested in the guy. I wanted to support the guy. I wanted to get to know him. Now, in various ways he did fuck up. Again, I don't pretend to be anybody I'm not. I go to the gym, I do push-ups, I lift weights. I remember what Dom Bauer used to flatter me by saying I was the most macho guy on vegan YouTube. A few people have alluded to my supposed macho-ness, but in terms of why I'm on YouTube at all, I'm very honest and raw in talking about the emotional content of my life. If I wasn't, I feel I would have nothing to offer on camera. And both on YouTube and in private communication with Joe, I was really honest with him about the ways in which the game he was playing was hurting me, was damaging me, was negatively impacting my life. And then the question is, what is he going to do from there? So I think for anyone who's in the drama trade, anyone who makes videos remotely along those lines, those are questions you have to be prepared to deal with. And if you're not prepared to deal with them, when someone like me brings them to you, then you're facing a fork in the road. I guess he maybe recognized that fork in the road a little bit too late. I really offered Joe friendship and support back when it could have helped him. And part of friendship, not every friendship has to be, close. You don't have to talk about, your family life or your ex-girlfriend or anything. You can have a friendship that's more business-like. There's no reason to think Joe and I would have been close friends. But part of friendship is exchange of information, and I've seen Joe get dragged into a bunch of situations where he didn't know what was going on. He really just needed to get the information from someone he could trust and someone who would be honest with him, and that could have been me. I mean, Joe believed these ridiculous lies about the secret Facebook group. If he could have just talked to me about that, I could have cleared up his confusion and addressed what was really going on. I was a member of that secret Facebook group, and everything Cheetah said about it was a lie, and Cheetah knew it was a lie. He was just manufacturing drama out of nothing. But Joe obviously got very upset about that and very involved in that when he shouldn't have. If he could have talked to someone like me, or just me, then, that would have saved him a lot of agony. And, obviously the whole thing with my legal case in Thailand, if he could have just talked to me, if he could have just accepted the olive branch I offered him again and again, where I said, look, if you want to know what's happening, I can show you more documents, I can talk you through what's happening, I can explain to you, because most of these legal documents, they don't mean anything if you're not a lawyer. If you're just looking at them in a vacuum, you really need to have that conversation to understand what's going on and why the court case took so long. Court cases are long and boring. I don't know what impression you got from movies and television, but there's not a lot to say. But, he had every opportunity to do the right thing on that, and he didn't take it. I mean, at the end of the day, there was a time, I hate that phrase, by the way. I think that's the first time I've used the phrase the end of the day on YouTube. This is a rushed video. I got to get back to studying Chinese. I really don't have time to make this video. But I want to, because Joe's obviously going through a kind of emotional crisis right now. But at the end of the day, look, there was a time when I assumed I would be doing a fundraiser to support Joe's vision for, running an animal sanctuary, when I thought I would have him on the channel and we would discuss the ethical issues and the economic issues and his plans for the animal sanctuary. And where ultimately, I have a small audience, but my audience includes people who are really hardcore political vegan activists, people who really support the cause, and includes people who really would have been important donors for his animal sanctuary. You could have a large audience, but if it's a bunch of teenagers, who aren't really committed long term, those are not people who are going to support your sanctuary long term. So, I think he could have engaged with me in a really productive dialogue about issues he really cares about and that I really care about. And he probably could have explored and come to a better understanding of those issues, or at least he could have become more practiced in explaining to an audience his position on those issues about the animal sanctuary and his plans and the economics, etc. of it. It could have been a very positive thing for him and me, and the people within my audience who choose to support his vision would have donated to him. On a shallower level, there was a time when I was planning a big event in Thailand that I invited Joe to, and I invited Vegan Cheetah to, and Jason Pizzino, and Vegan Lass was going to come. A whole bunch of vegan YouTubers were all going to come, be in the same place in the same time in Thailand. And I would have done a fundraiser for Joe. Everyone knows Joe doesn't have a lot of money. I also, believe it or not, don't have a lot of money, despite the rumors that I'm a millionaire or that I work for the CIA. I don't have a lot of money, so I really could have imagined doing a fundraiser where we say, look, can we try to raise $1,000 to pay for Joe and his wife to have this airplane ticket so they can come to this event in Thailand. I would have just been transparent with the audience. This money is not going to save the animals. This money is going to let Joe come to Thailand and give them a checklist of what he would do in Thailand. Whatever. He's going to visit an elephant park and break down weeping when he sees how badly treated the animals are. And we're going to film him on camera weeping in front of the elephants, and the elephants are in chains, whatever. Positive stuff like that. Joe, he's British. he responded to my talking about that stuff by saying like, oh, well, I never asked you for anything. You know, like, he made these ridiculous videos. He was always mischaracterizing what I was doing on my channel. He was like, oh, you made a negative video about me. You know, watch the actual... What does that even mean, a negative... Whatever. Joe did the wrong thing at every single juncture in terms of his relationship with me. Do I resent that? Not really. I reach out positively to vegans all the time who are scumbags and who have really hurt me in a malicious way. As I mentioned recently, I have even reached out to Vegan Ava, who's a terrible human being, but she's vegan and she wants to be a vegan activist. To some extent, you try to appreciate people not for who they are, but for who they aspire to be. You try to appreciate people not for the damage they've done in the past, but for the positive difference in the world they aspire to make in the future. You try to have some generosity of spirit with people. I tried that with Joe, and in the future, maybe I'll try that again. It definitely wouldn't be hard for Joe to pick up the pieces and to create a YouTube channel, or just, hey, forget YouTube. He can talk to me without YouTube. You don't need to have YouTube to talk to the human beings. It wouldn't be hard for Joe to have a network of people who support his positive aspirations, and not because of his former notoriety as a comedic figure, as a satirist, but simply because they really believe in the cause. And on YouTube, those are the people you want to meet, those are the people you want to know, those are the connections you want to make long term. Having 10,000 fans who don't give a fuck about you, who don't give a fuck about veganism, is not worth much. I would rather have 200 fans who are really down to die for the cause, who are really down to live for the cause, who are really trying to make something positive happen for ecology, for ethics, for the animals, for the future. Joe Vegan's got a newborn kiddo. I know what that's like. I know exactly what it's like to raise a newborn baby during its first year of life while being a vegan on the internet. I've been there. I've done that. At that time, back when I had a blog, before I even had a YouTube channel, I was out here trying to make friends with, trying to make connections with other vegan parents. It's hard. You know, it's lonely. I don't know. It's busy and crowded and lonely all at the same time. I can relate to everything the guy is going through, and I hope he rumbles around, in his heart and his soul and his spirit, and he comes up with a new way to do something positive.